Are you performing leadership or actually leading? I'm Chisom Udeze, and this is Overnight Wisdom, a podcast for leaders who are done pretending. Here's what happens when pressure hits. Most leaders double down. They work harder, they launch more campaigns, they push faster, and then they wonder why nothing moves. My guest today is Cecilia Flatum, CEO of Deloitte Norway, and she'll tell you about the year she lost it and so much more. Now back to that year. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Norway's market became volatile. Cecilia saw the red lights early and responded the way she's always responded. When it gets hard, work harder. So she dove in. Action plans, sales, new KPIs. She stressed herself and everyone around her, and nothing moved. And then her Nordic leader told her bluntly, "You've lost it. You can't succeed this way." This episode is also about what happened next. How Cecilia put down the campaigns, became internally anchored, and changed how she structured her days. You hear how she learned that when pressure hits, action isn't always the answer. Sometimes waiting, analyzing, and leading from values creates better outcomes than frantic productivity. You hear how she applies sports science to leadership, periodizing high, medium, and low intensity weeks instead of sprinting constantly, and how she discovered that when she became calmer, everyone else became calmer too. You also learn how to lead in rooms where your voice gets ignored, why identity clarity is a trust mechanism, why top leaders should speak last, how to design sustainability into your leadership instead of wishing for balance, and why doing less can help you achieve more. This episode is for you if you're pushing harder but nothing is moving, if you're taking care of everyone except yourself, if you think productivity means action and you're burning out because of it. It's also for you if you're a woman in a male-dominated space, learning how to hold power without performing masculinity. Cecilia shows us how to lead from calm instead of chaos, how to be the anchor, and knowing when to be the accelerator. Let's get into it. All right. Hi, Cecilia. Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Chisom. Always nice to meet you.
Likewise, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. And because we know each other, but I think my listeners may not know who you are, I'm just going to jump into I want to get to know you for my listeners, right? So tell me a little bit about you, your path to becoming CEO of Deloitte Norway. How did you get here?
Yeah, this can be a very long answer, but I'll try to. I always kind of believed in nature and nurture, kind of what are you born with, what happens in your life so that you develop to who you are. I grew up on a farm, 3 kilometers from the nearest neighbor, being the daughter of a potato farmer. I didn't really kind of know my potential, but I was from nature, I think, a natural leader. I always wanted to make an impact. If I see something which doesn't feel fair, if I don't see justice, if I see that things should improve, I just go into it. I want to change it for the better. I think that's kind of something that lies very deeply within me. But when I started my career, and I also came from a farm where things sometimes were pretty tough. I saw my parents working very hard. So the 20 years I had in my career work life before I became CEO, I kind of always had that mentality with me. If you're going to pick up some work and you're going to do it very well. And I was also very into sports, really wanted to kind of improve myself every day, every workout, every competition. So for most of my years, I just wanted to do a good job. And then maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, my plan was actually to leave Deloitte. I felt that I've been home 1 year with the twins that are now 11, and I didn't have clarity. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But then I kind of realized that if I don't only work out with clients in the market, what if Deloitte was a love affair, have I invested in Deloitte? So I decided to invest more in Deloitte and bring more of my passion into Deloitte and But then I also understood if I'm going to stay, I actually have to be one of the leaders, because if not, it's really difficult to make the impact. So even though I grew up on a potato farm, I can use big words. So in my previous leadership role, I wanted to change the consulting industry. I wanted it to be an industry where everyone could succeed, being a woman or a man, kids, no kids, ethnicity, sexual orientation, it doesn't matter. And through that role, which I had for 6 years, when we come to the CEO role, it wasn't something I really was that focused on. And it's very strange in companies like ours, because you can't apply for it. You're getting elected by the partners. And we are Norway. You shouldn't be so selfish. You can't actually raise your hand either. I raise it a little bit and say, well, I can be one of the candidates, but it's up to the partners to elect it. So when I got elected, I really, really enjoy it. And I think I kind of bring my whole self into it. But that's kind of, I think, why did I end up here? I'm not quite sure, actually. But I did a very good job in all the roles I have. And I said yes to opportunities, even though I was scared.
I love that. I also love hearing you say, having that realization that you want to be a leader, right? It's not just like one of the, directors or managers at the organization, but you had to be an executive, because that's the way you also make impact. So when you were also talking about you're not sure how you ended up here, I'm curious, how did you end up in professional services from potato farming?
Yeah, from potato farming. So again, you have several moments in life where you make choices. So my choice coming out of the potato farm, I'm not quite sure why. I think that one of my strengths is that I'm very curious and I'm not so afraid to jump on things. I actually moved straight to France, and I studied there, and I came back and I did more studies. But when I was going to choose my first job, and I call myself sometimes a late bloomer. I really enjoyed the life. I grew up in nature, but I didn't maybe get so much career advice. I didn't have the confidence to think that I could become a leader, or I don't know. I actually applied for Deloitte when I finished my master's, but I got rejected. I still have that rejection letter. So I just took a job within public sector. I was a financial controller at Ullevål University Hospital, but I really enjoyed my work in the public sector. I felt that I could really make an impact. We were quite a big group of young students that just graduated, and we got that role together. But after 5 years, I felt that I can do more. I can have a bigger impact. And I think it was a little bit of a coincidence, because I saw these consultants coming in, helping us for 5 weeks, 6 months, and then they went out again. And I was curious. So what is, I kind of think I was drawn to the flexibility, the opportunity to make an impact and then go out again. And also I kind of understood that this is a global firm. You get lots of opportunities. So, but to be honest, I'm not sure I actually knew what consulting was when I got hired back in 2004, but then I just never left. I think there are two reasons why I didn't leave. First, Deloitte has given me many opportunities, both in client projects and development. But I think also coming from that farm, having tough times, sometimes also financially, I'm a bit afraid of risk. So when I kind of had a safe employer, somewhere where I really felt that I can develop, I felt that I was at home. And no, you don't want to leave home, even though I wanted to leave a little bit in 2017. That's kind of where I was maybe, to use your word, shape-shifting into the next level.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thanks for sharing. I'm also thinking about, which is quite interesting, because when I think of risk and I don't see you on the other side of risk. I see you right on the front seat, because people who are risk averse, it's not just in their work, but maybe it's, compartmentalized. But, when I think of you, I think of somebody who's willing to learn, and you do not let fear stop you because you are afraid of making a mistake. You own, I might make a mistake, I might just say the wrong thing, but I'm learning, right? So that's kind of how I think of you. So it's quite interesting to see you also talk about yourself as somebody who's risk averse. Yeah? Huh.
Yeah, and I was recently attending this really fantastic leadership development course at Deloitte in Europe, where we were like digging into our history, our childhood, and then I kind of realized that yes, I have that risk-taking side, because why, if other people can't do it, why can't I do it? I do a lot of maybe some people might call it extreme sports, but it comes down to maybe taking risk. I mean, like you starting up your company, you had a conference and all those things. I think that that's an area where I would be a bit more cautious, actually.
Interesting. It's good to know. See, I always learn things about people I know, and when they come on my show, I think like a lot of us who know you are going to say, like Cecilia is the person who says, "Why not? Let's try it." Let's lean in, and I really love that about you and how you show up in the world. I want to talk a little bit about leadership and what you associate as your leadership identity. You've been in this organization for a very long time, but what would you say shaped how you think of yourself as a leader?
For a long time, I don't think I was so aware. I think I was on a leadership journey before I really understood, even though I have a background in finance. When I started working at a huge project where they were building a hospital, I started leading small teams, smaller projects. And then quickly I was leading huge transformational programs. And through those programs, I kind of discovered that from nature, I actually have an ability to lead. And I have this specific moment. I remember we were just about to advise a client to sign a big contract to develop an IT solution. And then like days before the signing, someone came in from the side and said like, this is wrong. You shouldn't sign it. We should take a completely different approach. And it got very hectic. People got very stressed. But then to my big surprise, I was a senior manager at the time. For me, I was completely calm. I was a bit stressed, but I was just kind of really dealing with the situation. Looking back, I was actually a bit impressed by myself, because like I didn't really freak out. I was really calm. I managed to kind of course, with the partners that was supporting me at the time, felt that now this is how we're going to do it. We're going to sort it out. And in the end, we went back and we gave the right advice. So I think that was the first moment where I realized that you actually have something in you to deal with others in those situations. The second moment, in hindsight, I've always been observing leaders, what I love, what people do, what I don't like. And the year I was in my maternity leave, I had just resigned. I was the president for the Norwegian Snowboard Federation. And I had like a big gap in my heart, because this was my personal project. And instead I started to write a blog. It was very popular to write blogs at the time. And my blog was called Leadership and Life. And what is good about like writing blogs or attending podcasts or panel debates is that you have to read up on a few things and discover. So even though I had these twins and I had to walk with this stroller for around 6 hours every day, I started writing this blog, and I really got curious on leadership. I started reading about research and what does it take. And I was just completely drawn to it. And I'm still learning. So I think as a leader, I'm not here to kind of, fool around or mess around. I really want to make a big impact on society, but also on my people around me, like one by one. And I know that there's not like one perfect leadership recipe, but like in the situation with the IT solution that I got very stressed, I had to use a few tools from my backpack. And then there are other situations that demands other types of leadership. But I think kind of what defines me and what drives me is that kind of I really, really know my values. And I really, really know that I want people to succeed. And maybe that's my most important job, actually, to kind of see how can I take obstacles away from them, but still not after time, not afraid to make a decision if that is necessary. But I always want to improve. I constantly read about what's new in leadership, what are the trends, how can I lead in such a way that I meet the expectation of younger generations. So I'm constantly shifting.
I also think of you as somebody who's always learning, and there's that
Mm,
curiosity, and
mm,
you make it
mm,
known that you're
mm,
always learning, and you remain quite curious. And the other thing you say about like not being afraid to ask this, to make decisions, I think that's quite important because in a lot of
mm,
workplaces where I've gone into, a lot of leaders are challenged with making decisions. They get into like decision paralysis, yeah, because
mm.
they don't want to take a stand. And sometimes, as a leader, you have to be the bad guy, right? Not everyone will be happy. So I think also having clarity to say, listen, I need to make this decision. This is why. And when you have strong values, you can ground them in that. I think that's quite important for even emerging leaders who are listening to this, thinking about, okay, in a very high tension environment, how can I show up? How can I take a stand? A question I want to ask you about Deloitte is what kept you there for so long, right? Like, I
Mm.
think somebody tells me they worked somewhere for 10 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, how? Like 20 years? I'm like, oh my gosh, why? Not in a bad way, but you hear conventionally that to progress in your career, oftentimes you need to move. You can come back, but you need to go somewhere else. I guess my question specifically for you is what has Deloitte allowed you to become that you don't think you could have gotten anywhere else?
That's actually one of my favorites question. Who do you want to become? If I'm going to kind of split my life at Deloitte into maybe two big phases, the first phase, I think kind of coming from that being like a very loyal employee, I just did whatever project people asked me to do. I just did it. I never complained. I got the opportunity to do a lot of different projects, but a bit into the same buckets. So I became really good at what I'm doing. And when you do it, you become a name in the market and they want you to deliver. So I think that kind of persistence, doing some of the same things over and over, actually also made me kind of pull me up through the career. I think that is kind of one area. And the other thing is that I have felt that Deloitte has been my playing ground where I can show responsibility. So when I came in, there were no female partners in my department, which was consulting. There was one woman I remember, she was on maternity leave. She was on the senior manager level. So I think this kind of it's just born into me, like from nature, also coming from that farm. And when people show me trust, I'm super loyal back. And when I came into like the role as the first female partner, I just kind of knew that through this role, I can make an impact at Deloitte and also on the industry. So if I leave, I actually abandon this project that we have. So that is kind of, I think, the reason why I decided to stay. The reason why I almost left in 2017 was that I didn't feel seen. We are very international. And at one time, I never had time to invest in my relationship international. But the reason why I've stayed is that some of my leaders and also some of my international leaders actually saw me and said, wow, this talented partner, she's about to leave. Let's pick her up and let's put her on new tracks. So many times, so my first 10, 15 years, it was only about client challenges. My next 10 years was more around also being into really challenging leadership roles. So I remember very specifically, we had from 2015 to 2022 a global CEO. His name was Puneet, and he really drove a big transformation. Every year he had something called the advisory board. We were 50 young partners that kind of were his advisors. And I got the opportunity to go to Dallas, where we have Deloitte University. And when I met him and some on his team, I was completely shocked because he had this extreme confidence, proudness, the way he was talking about Deloitte. I had never heard that, not at least in Norway. But I was like, wow, can you actually act like that in Deloitte? Okay, I'm going to stay and I'm really going to try to be such a driving force. And then I had a role, I was leading consulting, I was people and purpose leader. So I've been leading sustainability. So I have so many passions that I'm early in my career. I spend time on them outside my work. But at one point, after I raised my flag, hey guys, I'm leaving, I actually managed to get my hobbies into Deloitte. And also I'm very glad that I had a part of my career outside Deloitte, because when you come into institutions like us, you understand how lucky you are. Everything works. We have fantastic enabling functions, fantastic colleagues. If there's any problem, I can just call someone and they can help me. The other day, I was just struggling. How are we going to organize AI? And I just called our European leader, Stacy, for AI. And I was like, can you just give me some advice? And I had this big pool of experts just a call or a Teams call away. So no, sometimes it's good to stay, Chisholm, because I think actually then we can make a big impact.
Absolutely. I mean, it requires a lot of patience, but I also think it also requires. I hear you when you talk about if a place treats you well. I mean, of course, every now and then there's a stumble, a pothole in the road. But I think if a place treats you well, it makes sense to stay, right? So it's that thing about people might forget, what you say to them, but they never really forget how you make them feel. I know quite a number of people who stay in a place for so long, and I'm always quite fascinated. And when I ask them, it always comes back to this. I'm happy. Things are functional, stable. They're happy with their salaries, where they're going, and they have a clear path to grow professionally and also in leadership role, if that is what their ambition is. So it makes sense, but I also find it like, oof, it's a lot of commitments.
Yeah, but if I'm going to respond to that, so I haven't always been happy with Deloitte. I've been super upset, angry, frustrated. But then I think you have two options. Either you just leave or you stay. And I think kind of my default, and I think this again comes from my nature. If I'm upset with something, I do all I can. I just want to fix it, or I want to help out or something. So I mean, seriously, there's constantly things that I feel are not working, and working cross borders can be difficult, but we kind of all in the end maybe share a bit of the same values. But no, I have a lot of stories about things that have not been working very well. But I quite often, if people leave Deloitte, I see they go to a new employer, they stay 1 year, 1.5, and then they move on. The grass is not always greener, and sometimes you haven't maybe invested into your own company or your company, and that's why it doesn't work. So if I'm going to be happy at Deloitte, especially in some phases of my life, I also need to invest in it. If not, of course, we will break up.
Absolutely. I mean, that part resonates because I'm also a fixer. If I'm in a situation and it's not working for me, I have to fix it. I have to find a way to create it rather than just complain, because that's the truth. Like, there is no workplace that is beautiful, Xanadu, heaven on earth, right? So it's like, how do we co-create, but also, are we even allowed? So are we given that enabling environment to actually implement change when we want to? And you also said that's one of the things you like about Deloitte, is that you have those tools when you want them to change what you might want to sometimes. So now I do want to talk about shape shifting a little bit, right? Like, I think I see you as a badass leader. I think a lot of people see you as a badass leader. But I also know that leaders become, right? And leaders are still becoming. Was there any points in your leadership journey where you felt like you weren't being yourself? You weren't leading authentically? And when was that period? What did that feel like? And when did that shift to becoming you happen?
Yeah. This is sometimes a tough story to share because it's very emotional, but I'll do my best. I think for me, the big shape-shifting moment where I kind of really get to know who I am, what I stand for, my values, and I kind of really had a new comfort in myself. It wasn't through the pandemic, because then everybody was stressed and we were all trying to deal with all kinds of things. In the end, things were going well. We have hired a lot of people. All lights were green. And then overnight, we had a situation where Russia attacked Ukraine, and leading consulting. And in the Norwegian market is super sensitive to volatility, risks, uncertainty. And also, having hired a lot of people, we were thrown into an extremely difficult business situation. And as a leader, I remember it so well because they attacked in February, wasn't it? Or I don't know, example, because also before Christmas, you see the red lamps a little bit before your leadership team, a little bit before the partners, and definitely several months before the rest of the organization. And sometimes they don't even experience it because we managed to kind of get it back to gear. But I realized that we were in trouble. And then this happened with the terrible invasion, and everything stopped a bit overnight. And I turned into this, how can I say, maniac of a leader, because my whole life, and again, I think this comes back from my bringing up, like if things are difficult, you just work harder and you will have success. Whatever you do, just do it even harder. I think in every leadership meeting, I launched an action plan, a campaign, a sales campaign, a staffing campaign, new KPIs, and I stressed out myself, and I also stressed out all the people around me. And we were working so hard. Nothing happened on the KPIs. This went on for a long time. I would say maybe a year. And then I remember it very well. My Nordic leader, we had a call, and he was like, "Cecilia, you have completely lost it. You will never succeed the way you're leading. You don't have the team around you to help you lead." I remember I was talking to my business coach. Of course, I was just crying, and he was like, "Well, you are trying to take care of everybody. You're trying to take care of everyone, and you kind of feel you are to blame for everything, but who is taking care of you?" And I was like, "Oh, no one is taking care of me." And those like calls and sessions was a huge wake-up call. And then I realized how far off I was. So I did a lot of changes, but I think kind of my biggest change is that I started to go more from the inside and realize that the way I act, the way I make people feel, what I'm focusing on, how I communicate, it actually impacts everyone. So we took down all the campaigns and we went down into the bottom, the foundation of the organization, and we started tweaking on the operational pieces. I actually followed, if you know, the 5 a.m. concept. I got up every morning at 5. I did my workout. I did my meditation. I was writing the diary. I was writing down, today I'm going to do 3 things. Whatever happens, I'm going to do these 3 things. I did less, but I achieved more. And people around me after a while said, "That was happening with you. You're so calm." Everybody calmed down. And when the market picked up, we had actually super success, and we were so ready for that success. So for me, that was the big turning point, is that when shit hits the fan, action isn't always the right solution. And I think today I wait a bit more, I analyze a bit more, I go more into my values. I think more about what can I pull down here to make an impact up here. And then, of course, sometimes you have to just blow the horn. But that year, 2023, maybe the year I learned the most, but definitely the worst leadership year in my life.
Thanks for sharing. I'm curious about, was there a version of leadership at that point in time that you were performing? Like, where did that come from?
I think kind of I learned through my whole life is that if you want to achieve something, you have to put in more hours. You need to work harder. You need to do more. And in the end, you will succeed. So I think it just kind of, you learn from, it's like sports, it's muscle memory. You do the exercise this way, and if that happens, you do it this way. So I actually had to retrain my brain and my muscles. So I need to create some kind of new muscle memory. So, and I think also that was when I really learned, and quite often I talk to people about smart working. I never talk about hours. I don't care about it. I really try to focus on doing the right things. And now, especially as a CEO, what are the tasks that only I can do? And I'm going to do those tasks. And then I'm going to let the team do all the other tasks. I'm not always perfect at that. But so I think that's kind of when you are busy in the hamster wheel, all leaders need to spend more time to reflect.
Yeah.
That is actually super important, and have someone to actually reflect with, because that's kind of when you reboot your brain. From 2019 to 2023, I was not rebooting my brain.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. What I'm hearing, at least, and I think maybe the audience also gets this, is I think oftentimes, especially when you are in this productivity wheel and this fixing wheel, right? Like when you're talking, I see a bit of myself in the needing to fix, needing action, just do, take care of it. I think as a leader, you cannot always be running. You also need to take a break. You need to reflect. You need to introspect and go, okay, what does this occasion call for? And I wonder, what do you think? Like, is it something as well to do with this idea that we always have to be productive? And there is this running belief that productivity means action.
Oh, it's a good reflection, Chisholm. And what I kind of learned, and I think many will learn when you go through that, if I'm, I've done sports my whole life. At Deloitte, we also have a collaboration with the Sports Federation and Team Norway, and I've discussed this a bit with some of the coaches. So you will never take the Olympic gold medal if you only run high intensity weeks. And I remember when I was a young cross-country skier, I had high intensity week, mid, low, high, mid. I was just doing like this. My training schedule was set up as like this. So some of the things I actually did in that period, I started treating my leadership weeks or my work weeks as Olympic athlete would do. I still do it. So I have quite a few weeks where I feel like after summer, I know, okay, summer was low intensity weeks. We come back, all the new hires, the leadership team is getting off, back to clients. We have the onboarding, we have Ardalsuka. I know those 4 weeks are high intensity weeks. But then I know mid-September, we need to have medium. So I can actually go home from work a few times early, which is 4 o'clock, which is maybe normal for some. Sometimes we come home and you know what to do, but I know that my body needs it. So that's at least one thing that I would really recommend people to do. I have another leadership hack that kind of makes me have clarity, and I maybe should have mentioned it when I talked about the 5 a.m. club, but twice a year, I can spend a whole day or a half day with my personal strategy day. So the first times I did it, I really was working on what are my values, what are my needs, what do I need in my life to feel good? Like really it's a bit selfish, but what do I need? And then I've done it so many times now, so I don't always revisit my values. And then I only need a half day. I think about next 6 months, what I want to achieve. I kind of just lay out, and it can be that I want to achieve this at work, especially now in my new role, but it can also be, for instance, I have this idea that I want to try to learn a new sport. I started playing a bit golf with my husband. Should I learn some tennis? But how do I fit this into my schedule? So yeah, I would actually think more like an athlete and plan your workout weeks, because you're totally right. And if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of your people.
What you said about selfish, I think we can't pour from an empty cup. I think it's absolutely important that we are selfish. Yeah, sometimes, because we can show up better for ourselves, can show up better for our team, the people who we lead, our families, our kids. So that was what was also coming up for me, and I think your advice is also spot on around taking that time for yourself to reflect. I think it reminds me of this reset that a lot of people are prone to do around the first of the year or just before the New Year resolutions, but then it just gathers dust, right? It's like actually having room to not just do this for your personal life, but also do this for your work life, and to do that check-in. I think those type of resets to remind ourselves, what are we pushing for? What are we building for? I think that's quite important. And I hope a lot of people collect that as well from this conversation.
If I can jump in on that, and I think actually this is especially important for female leaders, because I haven't prioritized friends for 10 years. I'm sorry to my friends if anyone are listening. I get up in the morning and I go to the laundry and I fix it and I do that. And you just always do these things. Would I like take out a long week and go to the Alps? I was like, no. Would I? Why would I? And I think that at least some of us women, we really need to actually also do more of that selfish things. It's okay. You don't have to kind of always prioritize your kids. They know they know that you love them. So I have also tried to do a little bit more selfish stuff, actually, over the last year, just for myself.
How do you navigate mom guilt, Cecilia? Do you have it? Is that something that you still have? Is that something you used to have? How do you navigate it?
The short answer is that I actually rarely fear mom guilt. I can feel guilt for my husband, to be honest, because I see that sometimes he also has a career in real estate, but my work is a bit more unpredictable. Like I was home one afternoon and he did the schoolwork with the kids, and I was like, they were just screaming, running around. I was like, what is this? What you're dealing with? But so how do I deal with mom guilt? I think the worst is I'm going to travel and they're crying and they don't leave. And I think that's terrible. I've been crying many times in a taxi, kind of leaving the house. But then I try to kind of deal with it by knowing that we are always present. So I had just blocked my calendar. I rarely have meetings before 8:30 in the morning, because that morning, it's our morning. And they are early risers. We can get all up, the three of us, at 6 in the morning. Also during weekends, I spend the evening ritual. There's 11. I still spend quite a lot of time on that. Talk to them. If they ask for a glass of water in bed, I would always get it. Sing a song. So I just try to invest in them with them together. And I say to them, remember, kids with working moms, you are more successful. So they're like, okay.
I really love that. I love that. It's something someone asked me recently, actually, because they were talking about, having all this guilt and wondering how I was navigating my own guilt. And I think I had guilt in the beginning because I travel a lot for work. My husband as well is the one who is home. He doesn't travel often for work. He never travels for work, but he works in a more functional 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. And I used to always, I remember last year I was in the US for 3 weeks, in Japan for 2, and I would wake up at the oddest hours because I just wanted to be there when they came back from school, read to them, be awake and I was exhausted. I was completely trashed. But I thought, okay, I have to do this. I want to do this. But then I had to unlearn that guilt because I thought, I'm doing this for my kids. Yes, I'm doing it for myself, but I'm also doing it to afford the life that we have. So my kid can have the education that they currently have and will continue to have. And I rarely see kids grow up and go, oh my gosh, my mom treated herself like shit, so I would be happy. So look at me, I'm great, And I think as long as when I'm present, I'm present. They have my attention. It's also important to me that my daughter especially knows that she can be a mother and she could have a career, for herself. So I just had to unlearn it because I had to ask myself, by whose standards am I feeling like I'm doing a bad job? Am I doing the best that I can? Absolutely. So that's what helps me and anchors me when the guilt comes, because I just had to unlearn this social conditioning. And one other thing is, whenever my husband has to go away on a trip for 3 days or a week, do you think he's like, oh my gosh, the kids are never. He's like, woohoo, let's go. So I'm just like, okay, I need to unlearn this conditioning that I have, in a sense. So yeah.
The kids have a father, and normally everything turns out. But I think that's, it seems that we are a bit similar in this topic.
Yeah. Okay, I do want to ask you about when the pressure is on, which in your field, I can imagine, the pressure is on often. What anchors you? Like, what do you come back to?
Yeah. So the situation I shared with you kind of really changed how I deal with the situations that I'm under pressure. When that happens, I would say that what we do today, I have a really, really good exec, fantastic COO. So I don't feel alone with the problems like maybe I used to before. I always felt it was my mistake. So when the pressure is on, we kind of throw out what we spend our days on. We kind of seek together, how can we help each other? And quite often when the pressure is on, is sometimes to kind of really understand the situation, try to pull things away from each other and like, what is actually going on here? Don't think I have the answer myself. Right now, I'm really practicing asking questions, actually. How can I ask questions? I had a meeting today with a maybe partner to become a super strong talent. And I asked her a lot of questions, actually, like, I'm dealing with this, what would you do? So that is maybe one thing, understand the situation. And also quite often I find answers in values, how to deal with situations. Then maybe back to my top 3. We do this now and then we see what happens before we move on. But I think I have to realize, especially in the role I am now, the pressure is on all the time. And that was something, it's a big difference from going from a number 2 position to a level 1 position or a level 0 position. The first 6 months, I was pretty exhausted actually every day after work, because you feel it so much that it's your responsibility. You're being observed all the time. You get all these questions. Every meeting is a bit more serious. You're more afraid of doing mistakes. Not, we can do mistakes at Deloitte, but I kind of really want to show that I'm worthy of this. So that has also been a bit tiring, actually. Now I feel that I'm a bit more confident. But I also try to kind of really work on my brain. If we go like for a ski trip in Hemsedal, I really, okay, you don't have to work in the morning. Put the computer away. You don't have to check your email while we are at lunch. Someone will call you. You need to just log off. Just as you said, you need to also take some downtime, because if not, I would be stressed all the time.
Thanks for sharing. I'm curious, like Norway, in the large scheme of things, we're doing quite well in terms of, say, gender representation at work or in leadership roles. But the professional services also in Norway is male dominated. And you're a CEO and a woman in a typically male dominated function. How does your gender identity impact how you show up in this role, or does it not?
Yeah, I reflected quite a lot on this topic to prepare for this conversation. And when I came into consulting, I really, really wanted to fit in. I was always wearing these like black trousers, white shirt, and a navy blue sweater because we weren't that many women. I just wanted to fit in. And then I remember very well, I had one super, how can I say, stylish role model. She was very good at her work. She always looked great. And I was just looking at her and I was like, okay, if she can dare to be feminine, she can dare to really kind of be who she is, maybe I could follow her advice or follow her inspiration. So that was actually something I left quite early in my career. Only when I was a manager, I started like coming back to who I am. But I think as a woman and a female leader, I have experienced being at meetings when men just talk over your head. You don't get the word. You say something, no one pays attention. And then someone says exactly what you said. 5 minutes later, and everybody thinks that's a fantastic idea. And it seems like you have experienced the same, Susan. And I don't think it's just that kind of bias. So, and also when I was in the world of sports, I learned quite a lot of lobby and speaking, and also when I was in my blogger. So some of the things I do, like kind of my tricks, is that I always prep well. I always think about my arguments, maybe outline a bit in advance. I think about when do I speak in a conversation. If I'm in a Teams meeting and people are talking, I just raise my digital hand and I just sit there until someone says, oh, Cecilia, I want to say something. And then you can use different types of speaking to be heard even more. So, but I think over years, and I'm very true to my values. I know who I am. I can also play my femininity to my advantage. But I just really try to stay true. But I have had all these experiences. But I maybe more in international meetings, meeting cross borders, where you meet culture that are even more male dominated. I still find it a bit challenging, actually, because I get a bit exhausted of these really aggressive cultures where you are not heard. But I also think a lot about where do you sit in the room? Do you sit at the back of the table, at the front of the table? Who do you sit next to? How do you level your chair? And This I learned in the world of sports. So I'm very, very aware of ageism, and I think that you should just be aware. And don't people don't do it to be mean to you. It's just that this is the way it is,
Yeah.
actually.
It's a
Yeah.
system.
It's
It's part of this social system we're in, right?
mm,
Yeah. I like what you said though around preparation. You know, in workplaces that I go into sometimes, I think a lot of leaders take for granted that leadership is something you earn every single day. And it's something you also have to prepare for. I think oftentimes the leaders who don't do a very good job, it's not because they're bad people. And I think it's always important to separate because sometimes people think of leaders who maybe don't lead well as like, oh my gosh, horrible person. No, I probably catch a beer or wine with them outside in the real world, but within the function of their role, they don't understand the responsibility and the gravity of the work that they have to do. And having a role doesn't necessarily make you a leader. And what I'm hearing from you, and one of the things I do appreciate about you, one of the many things I appreciate about you, is just that clarity and that understanding that this is something I have to earn every single day. And this is something I have to prepare for. And that intentionality in not just walking into a room and because I'm the leader, everything should go fine. It's like thinking about how do I walk into this room? How do I show up? How do I create space? I really appreciate that reflection, Cecilia.
yeah. I can actually still, and I still do it. In my morning ritual, I go through all of my meetings this day. Where do I need to be? Which meeting rooms? So I don't get late because I don't like to be late. And I'll think about what is the purpose of this meeting? How I'm going to show up? How I'm going to enter? How I'm going to exit? What are my kind of points? What are my questions? So, as you said, don't take it for granted.
Absolutely. So you go into a lot of workplaces, you know a lot of leaders. What do you think, or what have you observed happens in organizations when their leaders don't have that identity clarity?
Oh, yeah. I think if you don't have identity clarity, people might become a bit cautious. Kind of what role is that leader playing right now? It challenges trust. Many leaders talk too much. They share, and I know, and sometimes I use it on purpose, and sometimes I use it also on purpose, not by doing it. But you know that when you are in a discussion, if you as the top leaders share your opinion, the discussion is dead.
Yep.
You have to share your opinion at last. Be the least person, and maybe instead try to get the tiniest voice in the room to speak, and all those things. So I think if leaders don't have clarity, don't kind of really know why they're here, I think things around them is a mess. They can be successful, I think, but do they really drive a high employee experience which drives client experience? No, I actually don't think so. I think actually companies, and I was being super lucky to be a part of a program at Deloitte where I really managed to find my identity and ground myself, like really, really ground myself and lead from within. For those who are just leading transactionally based on what's being thrown on them, first, I don't think it's good for the people around them. And I'm not sure if it's good for themselves. Do they really kind of feel good inside? I'm not sure.
Thanks for sharing. For emerging leaders who are listening to this and thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be like Cecilia, but you're not quite sure who they are as a leader, what would you say to them as something they could concretely do today, tomorrow, next week to start developing that clarity about who they are and how they want to lead?
So I touched upon it, and I'm not sure that I think people should be inspired by others, and hopefully I also can inspire someone, but you need to figure out who you are. And what worked for me is that I actually spent some time on figuring out and like actually writing down what are my values? What do I really stand for? And just, okay, don't stress it, just do that. What do you need in life to be happy? I need to work in an environment that is constantly developing. I need to have time to work out almost every day. I need to be a place where I have an impact. So I need to be a place where we speak free. So I really kind of know what I want. And I would just encourage people to dare to just dig a bit out. I would also encourage emerging leaders to find someone to talk to. It can be a business coach, or I actually have two groups. These are just females, my friends. One is my old snowboard leaders. We meet a couple of times a year in a very like Chatham Rules group, and we coach each other, and they are younger than me, and we share problems and things. And I always go out of these dinners with clarity. And then I have two other women that I met through projects where we just cheer for each other, but we can also bring up discussion. So if you just start with that, I think it will over time bring clarity. And then please do less. You will achieve more.
I love it. Do you only snowboard or do you do other winter sports?
I started snowboarding actually 30 years ago, and I still do it. But when I had the twins and they started skiing, you can't keep up with them going through a forest with they skiing and you snowboarding. So I've been skiing a lot, and I do both now. And then again, when I started to ski, I started skiing as a grown up. I really become good at it. So I did personal lessons, and I'm constantly challenging myself. So, but I do a lot of sports. I do a lot of fitness. I windsurf and we surf and I run, and yeah. So for me, that is kind of also where I go to clear my mind.
Thanks for sharing. I really love that.
I turned 50, and then you turn 50, you get a bit obsessed by your mental and physical health.
Yes, absolutely. Congratulations on 50. No, but I also hear you. For me, as somebody, mental health is also quite important for me. And I had to figure out how to carve out time for myself. So I'm a early riser. Like I wake up at 3 a.m. most days. Yeah,
Wow.
I wake up quite early, but I need that hour for journaling, for working out, especially. And for me, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes. It's never longer than 25 minutes, like any session that I do. But it's something that I do for myself. Like I am militant about protecting that, because when I don't have it, I feel like then the day gets away from me. Just having that structure to reflect, to visualize my day, it matters. So that also resonated for me in terms of like, carve out for yourself what is important. It's not always about some massive goal. It's just, I want time to listen to myself, to hear myself. And a lot of good decisions come out from my quiet time, where I get to change my mind or like challenge myself to try something else.
Oh, that's really inspirational to hear. Yeah, really. And what you said remind me of people shouldn't be so strict on themselves. So I know that you have much smaller kids than I. When mine were the same age, I followed this app, 21 minutes of workout. That's all I did. I was walking back and forwards in the living room. And that was okay.
Yes.
So don't be so strict to yourself. But that was inspired. I will never get up at 3. But maybe I should bring back my journaling. That is actually something which is completely underrated.
Yeah, journaling is quite nice. I love it. I started journaling for the first time last year. I'd never done it. Yeah. I was just like, I don't need it. I think a lot. Should be okay. And I write a lot. It's okay. No. But journaling has been quite good. Something just as simple as like, what are 2 things I'm grateful for today? Like it's been very meaningful for me, in many ways.
I'll just need to jump a little on that one, because I use journaling. Yeah, grateful. I had this grateful journey, and sometimes I ask my sons and I say, can you share a word? And then Ben said maybe kind, or he could say potato or whatever. And then you just kind of journal around that word. But one of the things I use journaling for, I had set some goals in life, and I wrote about what is that goal, how I'm going to achieve it, and it happens.
Yes.
And quite often I combine it with affirmations. Yeah. I don't know if people are familiar with that. I had these affirmations every morning, and what you say, it happens.
It happens.
It's yeah, I know. It's super strange.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
it happens. I am thankful for that thing that I'm working towards, for getting it. I just assume I have it. So I say, I'm thankful that this happened. That has been very good as well. Okay. So I have some personal reflections for you around leadership. So you've built your leadership journey and identity within the space in Norway. I think you're one of the most respected leaders, at least that I know of here. I guess my question is, what part of your leadership process, I know you've talked about the different ways in which you reflect on it, what part of it do you think is universally adaptable? Like anywhere you go, you can leverage that skill. And which part of it do you think has to be contextual?
That's a difficult question. I do some keynotes on leadership. And quite often I start with the question, like, do you think there's like one magical leadership style? Like, now I'm going to pull out a recipe. And there's lots of different research, but at least the research I managed to read recently is that there is not like one perfect leadership style, because it is, as you say, it's very contextual. And so that's kind of my first response. But there are a few things. I'm going to say a few things I think everybody should a few leadership capabilities that I think everybody should focus on, and then we can talk a bit like how do you act in different situations. So because Deloitte has done a lot of research for decades on leadership, we have 4 areas, and we also kind of develop ourselves and we measure on it. And the first one is inspire. And I think this area is more and more important for the new generation, and especially in a volatile world. You need to be able to share the purpose of your company, and you need to be able to share your personal purpose and how this is connected. You need to become really good at strategic storytelling. This is an area that I'm practicing a lot right now, to kind of share, because people want to know where they're going. The second area that I think is also key for leadership moving forward is to empower others. I had to kind of, instead of, because people don't want to be micromanaged or steered in a direction, but if you manage to kind of say, well, on this journey, the next harbor is over there. This is your boat. I don't interfere in how you run that boat, and maybe some need a little help at the start. So that is one thing, and especially now with AI, how can you help people to use AI to empower themselves? And then the 2 last one, the third one is to connect and collaborate. And I think we have touched upon that. This goes into how you influence and how you also connect with people different than yourself. Actually, one of the reasons why I have loved to join your conference and your network, because you have a completely different network than I have. So you get these inspirations. But in the end, whatever you do, you have to create value. You have to kind of show that you manage to implement the things that you are set out to do. So these are things that at least I strive for. When it comes to leadership, I have a picture in my mind that I have a backpack, and in that I have like 4 lightsabers. And normally, especially in the role I have now, you want to be a visionary leader. You want to kind of share where we're going and make people follow. And the brother of visionary leadership, my other lightsaber, is kind of more like a coaching leadership style that you really empower people to thrive. But that doesn't always work. So these are my go-to styles. But there are times where you have to kind of be that pace setter. Now, guys, I don't have the time. Get in that boat. I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to steer it for a bit. I'm going to row or whatever. And that has to happen sometimes. And people do. That was my kind of go-to style when I was a bit crazy in 2023. And then the last style, which is not very fun, that is maybe what happened during the Corona shutdown. It's kind of that military, we're just commanding. That can happen on occasion, but don't go there because people don't want to work with you. So these are like 4 capabilities and 4 styles that I think quite a lot about. Okay, what do I pull out of my backpack? It was a long answer, but just play with it, figure it out, and figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I love that, because what I'm hearing is not to be rigid. Yeah, you
No.
have to be adaptable to the context. Different contexts call for different type of leadership.
Yeah, and that's why you need to kind of lead from within, because you need to understand what's going on. If you only have one lightsaber cutting people in half, they will be super afraid.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to go into a speed round, Cecilia. My first question for you is, what do you wish you knew about leadership 10 years ago?
I wish I knew that I didn't have to do it all myself. I wish I knew that I could work smart, breathe, and do less.
That is so good. I love that. Yes. Okay. What are you aspiring to in your personal life?
Now, I really aspire to continue the really close relationship I have with my sons now that they're getting into their teens in a few years. Yeah, I still want them to be able that we can hug and they really can feel my mother love.
Thanks for sharing. That's beautiful.
And then I'm gonna pick up some new sports.
Do you know the ones?
No, I know it's something with, yeah, I'm playing with golf or tennis or something. I don't know.
I'm a
I
tennis
just got a.
player. I vote
Oh,
tennis. Yeah.
okay, okay. Well, okay. I'll pick you up on that one. I will see. I need a little project on my side.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. What are you aspiring to in your professional life? So if you look at your next chapter as a leader, what are you aspiring to?
I'm absolutely obsessed by leading Deloitte and making us a market leading firm. I'm not aspiring to any roles or anything. I'm just aspiring to really kind of get the whole team and what we have to offer. Actually, when I was into this role, I had to write a manifesto, and the title of this manifesto, "The Potato Girl Goes Big."
I
It
love
was
it.
it was shaping the future of Norway
Oh,
and
I
shaping
love it.
Deloitte.
I love it. But isn't Deloitte already leading in Norway? What am I missing?
No, we are not the leading, but our competitors can just watch out. We
Okay.
are in that attacker position. We are leading in several areas
Yeah.
and several series, but I want to get them all into the Premier League.
All right. Well, watch out, folks. Cecilia is coming for you. I love it. Okay. If you could speak to young Cecilia, just starting out
Mm,
in your journey,
mm,
what would you say to her? What do you want her to know?
If there's was one thing that I can maybe think I maybe missed out a little bit again growing up on that farm, I think many people think I'm super extrovert. But I have really, really learned to build relationships. I really kind of learned to get the confidence to dare to go into conversation. So if there was one thing I should tell myself when I was 20 was to kind of take care of your relationships.
I really love that. Thanks for sharing. Um, is there a moment in your life, like something that significantly impacted you and shaped who you are today fundamentally that you can share?
Mhm. Hmm. Yeah, I think we had a sneak peek on that moment. I would say it was that 2023
Hmm.
where
No, but I was wondering before that.
oh, before that, even
Yes,
younger.
even younger.
Yeah, that shaped my life. Yeah, maybe I should take the story when I kind of really broke out of the valley and the small town up north. And that was a complete shock to me.
Hmm.
So I was finished college and I was planning to go to university. Yeah. And then I was actually working at a hotel that had newly opened. So I was cleaning the rooms together with a friend of mine. And she said, well, all the girls, my friends, we are going to France and we are going to this city. And I was like, should I go to France? And then I decided, well, I'm also going to go to France. But I was like, no, I'm not going to go to their city because I don't want to speak Norwegian. I'm going to learn French.
Mm.
So I went on a different plane. I went some completely else. That was a tough year. I mean, my mother, who is unfortunately not longer with us, she said that I kind of became 5 years older on that 1 year. That was super tough.
Hmm.
But it that taught me a lesson. In the end, I'm actually glad I went something completely else. I went out. I thought I was like ruling the world, but I don't know. I was crying, missing my parents
But you didn't go
quite
home.
quickly.
But you stayed. And I think that's important, no?
Yeah, I stayed, but I did go home for my Christmas
Yeah, I
vacation.
know.
I
Yeah. That's understandable. I mean, I think because a lot of people take for granted just how difficult it is to move countries.
mm,
And when you're that young as well,
mm,
that's not easy. Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What is something you used to value as a leader that you no longer value? Or not even just as a leader. What is something you used to value that you no longer value?
That I no longer value. I no longer value. This is actually quite difficult. So I really value. So what do I value? I really value people that are true to themselves. That kind of really. I think maybe what I value more is to kind of do things the right way and have real results more than people running around bragging about all the things they've done or the numbers they have worked and that just kind of scares people away from our industry. So that kind of work hard, play hard, I don't know, work smart, show results, have a happy life.
I love that. I love that. Work smart, show results. So I'm hearing There's no value in performance. There's value in actually just showing up and doing the thing. Yeah.
I never get impressed by people that really try to brag about how many hours or things. Yeah, show me the result. And those, of course, are numbers, also the results. But show me the outcome, not only the input.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. What is a book that changed your life? If there is a book, I know you read a lot.
Yeah. There is maybe two books, but I got to mention one first. There is a book by Erica Ariel Fox called Winning from Within. And that book kind of was my guide for my inner journey. And that's kind of the book where I kind of got connected with who is Cecilia as a dreamer, a lover, warrior, and a thinker. And I just kind of realized that for the last 10 years, I've just been a warrior. I was just like worrying. And I had lost some of my personalities, like caring for people, having the lover side, and also daring to dream big thoughts. The other book that I really love, and that's because I'm a bit curious on spirituality. I'm very inspired by Buddhism, and of course, I know it's a little bit cliche, but I can recommend Think Like a Monk with Jay Shetty. It also comes down to that inner journey.
Yeah, I love that. You're very much in touch with yourself. Like both books, they lean in. Thanks for sharing. I have a final question for you. We've talked a lot about identity clarity today, basically knowing who you are as a leader. If someone is listening and struggling with that right now, not just as a leader, just even as a person, what is one thing you want them to know that can lead to transformation for them?
If I'm going to mention one thing, and I also quite often say this to our sons, get up in the morning. Get up in the morning. Get into bed earlier. Get up in the morning, because that's when you have that quiet time to reflect, to plan, do your bed. Then you have done one thing. Sit down, do some journaling. Research shows that until noon, those are the magical hours. That's when you get things done. That's when you are creative. And at least for me, well, having twins waking me up from 5 to 7, and I still do, they are 11. I used to sleep long. That was, I don't know, that's kind of, I think, my life until you became a twin mother. But no, get up in the morning.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. I think for people, especially, like morning people, get up in the morning and actually use that morning productively. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing so honestly. I really appreciate you. And I learned a lot about you today, Cecilia. I really appreciate that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you. It's always nice to meet you and also learn from you, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Overnight Wisdom. Here's your one takeaway. Notice this week when you're performing instead of leading, when you're shape-shifting instead of being authentic. That awareness is where identity clarity begins. New episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe, and if this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Chisom. Thank you for being here.